Welcome, it's the RC Renegade here. Today is a special day because I got a Project Nitro RC car that I hope to rebuild and restore to its former glory. So let's get into the project. Let me show you what we're working with here. I got this Kyosho Inferno MP9 Nitro RC buggy. It's a 1/8 scale and I got a great deal on it. Typically they sell brand new for about $500 and used for about $300, give or take. I got this car for $150 because it's a project car and the guy I got it from was just looking to get rid of it. So hopefully I can restore this to its original condition and I can get it running and just keep it as a fun hobby car. If not, and I'm not able to get it running, I will learn from this experience and gain knowledge up in here, but hopefully I can get it going, but I don't know, we'll just have to see. This car has a lot of pros to it. It has a few cons to it as well. I'll show you guys that in a minute. It also came with this handy transmitter here, but the most important thing is this car is low hours and it is all original, guys. It really hasn't been messed with that much, and that is a huge plus. So let's get into it. Let me show you a close-up of this car. So just looking at the exterior of this car, it has some dust and dirt, but it looks clean overall. There's no like major scratches or blemishes. The shocks work. You can see the front end looks complete. Nothing. These shock towers here are all original. The most important thing about this car, just looking at the exterior, is the tires, guys. These are the original tires that came with the car, and I know that because this specific paint scheme here on these wheels was the original from the factory. And you can see the back end here looks clean. All the suspension works. It goes up and down smoothly, and that is a plus. You can see that the tire tread on this is pretty low use, where the wheels still have their treads, has the original wheels, and that is huge because a lot of times you get these vehicles and they have like the tires are gone, or they've replaced them with aftermarket ones, which is fine. It means it's been ran harder and has more run time. You can see there's somewhere on the front, and that's just from turning, but overall you can tell this is a pretty low hours vehicle. You can see the exhaust port here. It looks very clean. It's not dinged up. There's some dirt and grime from running, but that's pretty normal for something like this. You can look and notice the engine head itself doesn't have major scratches on it, which is a plus. Sometimes, someone would replace that, but as far as I can tell, this is original. This is stock to how it came from the factory. Now the rear wing, you'll notice it is the original rear wing, and there's not a ton of scuffs along here. So a lot of times you'll see a car and it has high hours, it's been high use. These edges here are torn up, and like when the car flips over, it lands on concrete or dirt and it just tears up that edge of that front wing. You can notice all on here, it's very crisp and very clean, and that is good. So now let's pop the cover off and take a look at the internals. All right, it is time for the big reveal. Let's take the body shell off here. And here is the internals. Now before we get into the internals, real quick, let me point out, so here's the underside of the body shell, and you'll notice there's just kind of some dust and dirt from running, but nothing major, no major dents or scratches. There's a little bit of melting right here from the body being near the exhaust, but that's normal just due to normal running, nothing to be alarmed about. Now, let's get into the real pros and cons of this car. So let's go over the cons first, and then we'll go to the pros. So a couple cons about this car. You'll notice the air filter, which is right here. It's in pretty rough shape. You can see it's just kind of disintegrating over time. I can replace that. That's not it's not too big of an issue, but that does tell me a little bit about the history of the car. This car has sat for some time, probably in someone's garage, and they really, you know, just over time, these air filters will deteriorate. That's not a huge deal, but that is something that we'll need to take care of. Now, I was told that this car did run at some time, but when I got it, I was told it was not currently running. And just looking at this car, I can tell there's something wrong with the fuel system. And the reason I know that, you'll notice right here, so our fuel line comes from our exhaust and pressurizes the fuel tank right here, and then that pressure from the fuel line from the exhaust pressurizes the fuel tank, which pushes fuel from the supply line and into our carburetor. And this small line from here to here is ran incorrectly. See, they ran it from the tank directly to the carburetor, and that is a no-no. That is incorrect. What they should have done is they should have ran this line out and around the fuel filter, and then, I'm sorry, around the air filter. So they should have ran the fuel line out, around the air filter, and then back to the carburetor. And the reason for that is because it has to have a sufficient run of line to draw the correct amount of fuel into the carburetor. So that right there could be one of the reasons that this vehicle was not running correctly. So right off the bat, we know we're gonna have to replace the air filter, we're gonna have to replace the fuel lines, just because, you know, they get cracked over time, they get old over time. You want fresh fuel lines. We'll run this fuel correctly, the fuel line correctly, and you'll notice the seal here, there's a seal that goes around the edge of the tank. That actually appears to be in good condition, so our fuel seal is good. Now, the one other con I noticed about this vehicle is actually on the bottom side. So let me flip it over and show you guys. So here is the bottom of our car, and this car is clean. There's not a ton of scratches on there, which is good. But these 4 bolts right here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 bolts are what our engine mounts to right here. And I don't know if you can see on camera or not, but these bolts have been, someone has messed with them, and the heads are starting to strip out. It looks like somebody took an angle grinder and ground like a slot for a flathead screwdriver, and because it looks like the tops of the Allen keys, it's an Allen key, it looks like the tops of the Allen keys are stripped out. And you'll notice there should be 4 bolts that hold the engine in, and this bolt right here is gone. So we have 1, 2, 3 bolts holding in our engine, and then the 4th one is missing. So just due to the nature of these 3 bolts being partially stripped, and the fact that one of these is missing, I'm gonna order a set of replacements for this engine mount. And what you should do on these Nitro vehicles, or all vehicles, all RC vehicles for that matter, is you should use a red thread locker or red Loctite of some kind to hold in the bottom screws, because otherwise these screws will just come out from vibrating over time. When you run and the car goes over bumps, that'll just jar the screws loose, and then they'll fall out. And that's probably what happened here, is this person just didn't Loctite down their screws. Now, flipping the car back over, let's take a look at the good of what we have going on. You can see we got some of this air filter particles roaming around here. We'll clean that up in a minute. But just looking over the pluses and the cons of what's good for this car. So the things that this car has that is going correctly is everything looks original, guys, and that is huge. These two servos, this is a steering servo, this is the throttle servo. These look original, no one's messed with them. That is a plus. As I mentioned, this ring here for the fuel system, that looks to be in good shape. The fuel tank itself is in good condition. You'll notice there's a few dents here on the exhaust. That's just from normal wear and tear, but the exhaust system itself looks to be in good condition. You know, I don't see any signs of leakage or anything like that, like no oil spots around the joints. That tells me the system is sealed and it is good. Before I bought this car, I double checked. This engine is not seized, and I can turn the flywheel over with my hand, and the engine turns over. It's not seized, and it turns over. It has great compression, and that is huge, because with a Nitro especially, the engines tend to seize, and then if you're restoring one, you have to unseize the engine, and it just makes a lot of work. With this one, the engine has great compression, which is awesome, and the engine has good compression. It's not seized. The engine has itself, as I mentioned earlier, you'll notice there's no major scratching or like scarring around the engine head, and that is big. There's like a minor one here, but that's nothing major. And the reason that is a big deal is because if this car flips upside down, it'll scratch up that engine head, and if it has major impacts, it'll dent the engine head, and all this nice paint here, all these decals, will just be scraped away. And that is not the case on this vehicle. I mentioned before, this car is low hours, and we can tell that because, for one, the tires, like I mentioned earlier, these are the original tires, and you can see they're barely used, guys. If this car was heavily run, these tires would be bald, and these tires would be worn down as well. They haven't even rotated the tires, guys, because the front tires always wear faster than the rear tires, because when you steer, that wears out the front tires a lot faster than the rears. And you'll notice that the front tires are worn, but they're not worn that much, and the rear tires are barely worn. So this car has low hours. And you might say, well, I noticed the car has some scratches on the underside though. Yes, that's true, but it doesn't have a lot of scratches. It only has a few scratches, which also reinforces the theory that this is a low-hour car. Now, just as far as nitros go, they said it was not running correctly, and then it just stopped running. So that could be any number of things, but the way I look at a project like this is just the process of elimination. So what we have going for us right now is we have all the original parts. The engine is not seized. It's all complete. Now, if I got a car and like what to watch out for on these is if you look at these screws and like these screws are stripped, right? Or if it's mismatched. So all these screws are original to the factory. All these are original to the factory. And what'll happen is someone will come in and they'll try to modify a car, and they'll take out screws and they'll put back the wrong ones. Screws that did not come from the factory. And you say, well, what's the big deal? A screw is a screw. Well, especially with RC cars, you want to be detailed and you want to do what you do correctly. So you want to, when I work on an RC car, I want to work on it by the book. So I want the factory screws, I want the parts to be original, and if someone else has been messing with it before I got it, like I can tell that, and then I have to go back and buy the proper parts and replace it. So the fact that that has not happened and all of what we see here is original from the factory is huge. So that is where we stand right now with this vehicle. So the next step in restoration, I'm going to order this fuel filter, or I'm sorry, not the fuel filter. I'm going to order this air filter, which the air is sucked in to the carburetor, which is right here and goes into the engine. So I'm going to order this air filter. I'm going to order fuel lines, and I'm going to order engine mounts, the four engine mount screws, which are on the bottom under here. So once I order these, the air filter and the fuel lines, we will go from there. But until then, you'll notice there's just some dirt around this vehicle just from general driving. So it's not terrible, but I'm gonna clean up the dirt on this vehicle. And so when the parts do come in, the vehicle will be clean. We can put the parts on and then go from there. So working on these vehicles is a journey, and this is step one of this journey. I also wanted to show a preview of the transmitter that came with the Kyosho Inferno MP9, and you'll notice this is the factory transmitter that came with the vehicle. It looks pretty clean. There's no blemishes or scratches on this, and you'll notice it does power on, and that's good. The steering wheel goes back and forth smoothly, and the throttle trigger moves back and forth as it should. So looks like a clean transmitter, stock from the factory, which is good. So that is another piece to the puzzle that looks to be complete for this vehicle. We'll test the electronics in the future, but right now I just wanted to show you what we're working with. Be on the lookout for more videos for the Kyosho Inferno MP9, and as always, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.